Isn't it the Ron Bodenheimer?
Bodenheimer, that's how I pronounce that last name. It's a long one, I know. How many people didn't get a little packet as they came in? Oh, 1, 2, the information, oops, and I'm passing out to you here. If you could take the time eventually to maybe do the little purple sexual addiction screening at home at your leisure. Thank you. I think there's just 2 more. It's a rather lengthy questionnaire, and it's something that we use
Not going to be an easy one
in
to
our
fill out.
Conqueror
Is it?
series. If you could just keep passing those up, that'd be great.
Not going to be the most fun one to fill out either.
It won't be, maybe perhaps, but at the same time, it's a great eye-opener to what we do. And let me introduce myself for just a little bit. Again, I'm Ron Bodenheimer, and I attend the Evangelical Free Church here. I'm the facility supervisor. I was previous to that in retail way too long. Enjoyed a great career with Sears, had several different management positions, district manager, store manager, sales manager. Got to work with a lot of people throughout my life, and has brought me a lot of different great experiences. Unfortunately, in my life, I had some things that weren't so great. One of them being sexually abused as a boy. Struggles in my life with sexual identity that I had early in life because of that. Dealt with pornography issues, which has been an experience to say the least, but yet an eye-opener for where we're at today. And this brings us to the courses that we've got in the Conqueror series and the Pillar series. And timing is so prevalently accurate right now in our society. I want to thank you for being in this room, first of all. It takes guts. We're going to have some good conversations, and I want to have this as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, bring them up. Let's talk about it, because this room is going to be our safety net right now. And all those things and questions that you may want to ask or are afraid to ask because of just the uncomfortable subject of pornography, we want to talk about right now. Each and every one of you have a little green sheet in front of you. And I kind of want to walk through this because this is life today. Starting out the very first comment there, 68% of men in the church viewing pornography, on a regular basis. Gallup reports 67% of men ages 18 to 49 said pornography is morally acceptable. According to a new Gallup survey, 43% of Americans now consider pornography to be morally acceptable, a 7% spike from the year before. How bad is the situation? At least 78% of all men that attend the evangelical free churches, or excuse me, free churches, just churches in general. Maybe they do here. 80% of evangelical youth pastors also watch pornography, and now the greatest increase is among women and young ladies. It's killing us. 64% of all Christian families have an acute problem with pornography. Research supports McDonald's concerns. Here's some amazing facts as well. 3 out of 5 divorces are now directly related to pornography.
Wow.
And I heard it earlier in Robin's presentation. It's such a horrible thing, and unfortunately God has the right and does expose us in different ways. And oftentimes we wait till tragedies happen before we try to seek help. And many times it's too late, and you're trying to rebuild things that are so crumbled that it's impossible maybe to put the pieces back together. But thank God for the grace of Jesus, the blood that was shed for us to be able to have forgiveness and grace and growth, and it's what we do with that repentance that makes a big difference in our lives. 80% of the 15 to 17-year-olds have been exposed to hardcore porn. The adult porn industry reports that 20 to 30% of the traffic comes from children, as early as age 11 now. Over 40% of women and 60% of men are dealing with some sort of sexual addictions. Over 40 million Americans are regular visitors to porn sites. The average visit is about 6 minutes and 29 seconds. There are around 42 million porn websites, which totals about 370 million pages of porn out there. Porn industry's annual revenue, here's a good one, is more than the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball combined. It's more than the combined revenues of ABC, CBS, and NBC. So is this big money? It's billions of dollars of revenue. So do you think these people want to give up billions of dollars of revenue? And it's only going to get worse. 47% of the families in the United States reported that pornography is a problem in their home. 56% of American divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornography and websites. 70% of Christian youth pastors report they have had at least one teen come for them for help in dealing with pornography within the last 12 months. 59% of pastors said that married men seek them for help with pornography. Probably one of the #1 reasons in today's problems dealt with in the churches. 33% of women aged 25 and under search for porn at least once a month. Only 13% of self-identified Christian women say they have never watched porn, and 87% of Christian women have watched porn. 55% of married men and 25% of married women said they watch porn at least once a month. 57% of pastors say porn addiction is the most damaging issue in the congregation, and 69% say porn has adversely impacted the church. And then finally, only 7% of pastors say their church is a program that helps with struggling in pornography. When you take a look at the statistics that are out there today, and the reality of what this is not even a moral issue. It has moral implications, but it really is a brain issue and what we've done to ourselves in this. And you may ask yourself, well, why is this so appealing? Well, obviously it's appealing for a lot of different reasons. Mostly, it's a reason for us to medicate pain, believe it or not, within our past. We become attached to a fantasy. In one of the videos in the Conqueror series, it talks about how God has truly given us the gift of sexual desire. And that's a wonderful thing. It's on purpose. God intended for us to have intimate relationships, but that intimate relationship is to be with our wives. And unfortunately, we take that to the extreme just because of the exposure and what porn has given to us. On the back side of that sheet, it explains how the pornography industry is now into video games. I think there's a figure in there that says that it's over 1,600 different video games out there now have pornography attached to them. So the exposure for children today is even as young as 11 years old, and you don't have to find pornography. It finds you. It finds you in social media. It finds you directly. It finds you in different connotations of things that you may look up very innocently sometimes on the internet. And anything, we learned just recently that even children's social media sites like Snapchat, you can click on an eggplant and all of a sudden be directed to something that will allow them to be directed to a porn site. So it's available, it's there. Unfortunately and sadly, it's part of today's culture. And so The difficulty and yet the acceptance of what we have to understand is we need to make an assumption today that it's a part of our lives. It isn't anything that we have to guess if our children or if our grandchildren are being exposed to. It's reality. And so I feel like we have to allow ourselves to be able to have conversations to our kids, to our families, and amongst ourselves in saying, what can we do to make this an issue that we all want to talk about? Because it's not going away. We just learned that it's billions and billions of dollars of industry. They aren't going to give that up. And when you think about the different avenues of things that the kids play with, in particular in these video games, and now virtual reality, you know, the Oculus Go, put these glasses on, now you're in this 3D world. It has got some wonderful things, absolutely, when you think about the learning implications that can have for us, but also the pornography industry is paying very great attention to that. How wonderful that experience is going to be to have a 3D image, a virtual reality in pornography. They're all over it. The Conqueror series, the 7 Pillars of Freedom program, is a resource and a tool that's available. And why this is so critical and why I'm so passionate about it is because this problem is something that you cannot fight yourself. You can't pray it away. You can't just stop doing it, because evil understands your desires. And you might stay away from it for a little while, but all of a sudden it comes back, and it comes back and it hits you hard. This program allows for a group of people to get together and learn not only where their pornography habits and sexual behaviors have come from, but how to overcome them as a group. And the biggest part of it is really and truly the understanding of that. There's nothing wrong with you as an individual. It's things that have happened in our lives through experiences that have brought us to the position of the uncontrollable addiction that this can bring. And why is it so addictive, you ask yourself? Well, in one of the videos, it's probably a good example of the desire of what God has given us in this sexual feeling of what we embrace. And it talks about having some natural fruit available that God gives us, strawberries as for instance is what's brought up in you. The first time you grab a nice ripe strawberry and you bite into that, and my goodness, it's just delicious. You can feel the a little bit of the sugar, the sweetness of that, the great flavor that strawberry has, and how wonderful that is. Now take that aside and all of a sudden grab yourself a Snickers bar and you start chomping on that Snickers bar, which of course isn't a natural God-given thing. We don't have Snicker bars trees out there. Thank goodness we got grocery stores, but man, you grab into that Snickers bar and how delicious that is. Now I got chocolate and all these flavors, and now I go back and maybe bite into that same strawberry, and all of a sudden it's not so great. It's not as sweet and wonderful as that manufactured Snickers bar is. And that's what pornography does to us. It creates a fantasy of something that is personal in a person's desires that take them away to God's given gift of what love is between a husband and a wife together, and the intimacy that they share. All of a sudden, that natural feeling isn't as good as that Snickers bar anymore. And that's where the addiction process really starts to take place and really grabs hold to an individual. So in this Conqueror series, we get to be together with a group of people. And this church, thankfully, has grabbed onto that and said to ourselves, what do we want to be as a church? What do you want to be as leaders in your community, your own churches, What sort of a church do you want to be? And we've decided that we want to be a church of healing. That this congregation is supportive of issues that are out there, be it better marriages, pornography issues, life itself, and what can we be to bring in people and be helped. Because we live in a world of hurt. We live in a world of hurt in a lot of different aspects, and pornography is just one of those. So this allows us to be able to get together and be a church of healing, and my plea is that we take this beyond just this church. Mike Rash and I have stepped up. We've been on radio, and I'm going to have another Conqueror series program coming up early here in April. And we want to be able to get the word out because we need participants. One of the hardest things for individuals to do is to come to grips with the shame and the embarrassment of an addiction like this. It is extremely hard to come forward and say, I got a problem, and I need some help, and I can't do that alone. And it's sometimes difficult for a person to do that within their own immediate church, just because of the people that we know that surround us, that it becomes even a harder challenge. So what we would like to do is to try to extend this as much as we possibly can within the community, within other churches. And I know, as for those of you who are here in clergy, you're being approached, but maybe you don't have a program. 7% of churches out there have programs. That's nothing in comparison to what the situation is for people. So I plead with you to be able to use this email address, conquerme@yahoo.com, conquerme11. And that's my personal email. It's a confidential email. If a person just wants to ask questions, what is this program about? What kind of support can I get? I would encourage you to do that. Mike's is papa1@paulbunyan.net. And he is available as well too. I've given you the information on the front of the sheet there, that my cell phone number, 218-556-8972. I certainly will not be objective to any phone calls that you may have and questions about the program. The Conquer series is a 10-week program, DVD series, where we sit down and we look at all sorts of different reasons why this is a brain issue and not a moral issue, and where that comes from. The oxytocin that's released, the dopamine that's released, the neural pathways that are created within our brain, and where the Apostle Paul has told us about the renewing of the mind. Ultimately, that's what this is renewing of the mind, to get rid of some of those old neural pathways that lead us into addictions, that lead us back to the boat, if you will, where Peter was always led back to that when times were tough. The 7 Pillars of Freedom program, as we migrate from this, which is really an introduction of the hows and whys, and the understanding that there isn't anything wrong with you. This is where it stems from, and once you get that education of how and where I've been in my life, and start to deal with some of the things that have maybe brought me to where I am, that education gives you power, the power from the people within the group, give you support. We call each other weekly to find out how we're doing. We meet once a week for a couple of hours to do these series. You're in a room of non-judgment. Everybody's got issues, everybody's got problems. We all support each other, and you have the right tools then to be able to combat this and win once and for all. And this is sort of really the whole goal of everything. I've got several different books up here also that I have read that are absolutely wonderful. But I will tell you, out of all of the books that you can read, and they're great, without the support of the group and other people that can help you and walk through this with you and call you, you're not going to be successful. That's why it's so critical to be a part of this. If this is what we ultimately want, and that's freedom within our lives. What is freedom, you might ask? You know, I think freedom is going to bed at night knowing that no matter what happens, you know, the next day I'm going to be okay. Freedom is allowing your wife to just grab onto your phone at any time and look at it. Freedom is having your wife walk through and look through your email at any time without any guilt or feeling. And that sort of freedom brings honesty and trust. And if you want to really feel God in your life and the beauty of what that relationship can be between a husband and a wife and just your own soul, the breaking of this chain that's on you through the pornography addiction, sexual addiction as a whole, whatever it might be, is a grace of love that is hard to describe. It just gives you such peace, such feeling, such wonderful self-fulfillment. I feel God's presence in my life. I am good. I have the grace of God. I have Jesus who went to the cross for me and forgave my sins. So I am worthy. And that's one of the hardest things that people have difficulty with. When you're involved and trapped in this sort of an addiction, you feel so unworthy to God that my situation is so bad that I can't possibly be forgiven. If my family really knew what I was, I would never be loved. If my wife understood something in this problem that I have, she would never want to be with me. And all of those things are so false, and evil wants us to believe that we start hiding. And the more we hide, and the more we walk away from those type of situations, evil steps in and he just loves that, because that's where his power wants to take over and bring you away from what God has really intended within our lives. I gave you the sexual addiction screening test, not that I think you know all of you are sexual addicts that are here. But the interesting thing about this as we go through the program together is there might be some underlying issues within our lives that we didn't really even think about. When you start going through and answering some of these questions to yourself, and again, not to be able to prove that you are sexually addicted, but there might be situations that we have within the group that might require professional help. And that's okay. And coming to grips with all of that is a good thing in a person's life. We're not designed to be counselors within this group. That's not the purpose. But at the same time, there might be situations that would allow for that to take place. Within that, though, there might be things that are brought up that are like, wow, this is something I should maybe pay attention to. The other sheet that I gave you is this trauma check sheet. And if you did want to take a couple of seconds, you probably could go ahead and do that. But what's important about that is, as I mentioned earlier, pornography and sexual addictions can be a form of medication of pain for us. That's what we go back to medicate those things within our lives that have been a struggle, that have been a secret, and this is my way of medicating that pain. And oftentimes with trauma, I used to think of trauma as being something that's dramatic that happened in my life. You know, the loss of a mother, a father, a house burning down, sexual abuses as a child, rape, those kinds of things were trauma. And I thought to myself, I never really had trauma, until I started to learn a little bit more about it. We also learn a little bit about what's called WACs and LACs. WACs are some of those things that I just talked about. hard things that have happened in our life that's really, really a whack. And then there's lacks of things that have happened in our life. Growing up as a child, being picked on all the time because maybe you're the scrawny individual and people just called you, you know, wimpy and gay and those little whacks or lacks, if you will, if they happen often enough, all of a sudden become whacks. And you start to believe things that people start to talk to you about and maybe accuse you of. And once you start to believe those things, we really and truly are what we believe. So if we believe that we're unworthy, if we believe that we're not masculine enough, if we believe those types of things, then we start to behave that way. Questions so far on anything?
This is basically like a narcotic addiction.
It's very, very similar to, absolutely. Absolutely. The program's a little bit different because the educational person behind it are different, but the effect is exactly the same. You're working with other individuals that are being supportive of this particular habit. After the Conqueror series, the 7 Pillars of Freedom steps in. This is in a book form. It's not DVDs. It is an intense, in-depth digging in of what the Conqueror series teaches you. The Conqueror series is really the DVD education portion of any addiction. This is the guts of this freedom. Being a part of this is about a year-long program. I'm just finishing up a Pillars class within this next month. We have met for almost 13 months because there are certain lessons that we've decided to do a couple of different times, and it really digs into things within our lives that have happened to us. It digs into supportive reasoning, and not that we're looking for excuses for things. They aren't excuses for behaviors. But there's an education behind that allows us the understanding of why I brought myself to where I am today. And this supportive group is absolutely wonderful. And it's a step-by-step, tough lessons in some cases. Really puts your mind to certain things. And in many situations has brought about different feelings that people have had suppressed for so long that they never really thought it was a part of why they led themselves to an addiction of sort. And so the real healing and support of brothers within that program are absolutely wonderful and really brings the healing for true freedom. And again, that freedom is what it's all about. So how many of us are within clergy or been a part or have heard of or in a situation where maybe we know of somebody that we want to encourage, if you will? That's what this is all about, is getting the word out, knowing that there is a resource that's out there that we can be supportive of. As a clergy, as a pastor, you have a plate full of things that are this tall, and you have weekly things that you need to do, and that's delivering the message on Sunday. That's the most important thing that's on your plate, is being able to work with that. You can't possibly be marriage counselor, pornography counselor, child counselor, youth minister, everything at the same time. It's just impossible. So this series really allows you to have a program that's very supportive, that you can direct people to with confidence in knowing that there is help available. And I think that's the toughest part is for people to understand, where do I go? Where do I go for help for this kind of a thing? It's so embarrassing. I couldn't possibly let anybody know that I have this issue. And this group allows for, like I said, that non-judgmental atmosphere to be able to make a difference for yourself, for your life, and get your freedom back. And that's what it's really designed to do. And out of all of the things that I said, I've read, this particular program is solid. It's Christian-based, obviously, and it really digs into the source of the addiction and how it happens in a person's life.
How many in your class?
We have, the Pillars class consists of about 8 guys. I've given 3 different Conqueror series group programs to a little bit more than 15, 16 people since I've been doing it.
Was that from just this church or some other churches?
That's just from this church. People who have attended, you mean? Yeah, there's other people outside of the church, but the program has been right here at the Evangelical Free Church. And we're welcome, and we want to be able to network with other churches. We want to be able to network with other resources. I've been in contact with several different parole officers where I've been working with individuals who have had sexual addiction problems. I'm trying to stem out to them as well as the court system and wherever I can get involved to be able to have this available so that we can get the word out and be a church that makes a difference for a person's life. And we need your support, we need your help, and we want to be able to network with that. So both Mike and I are very, very dedicated to this, and we want to make ourselves available wherever we possibly can. So even if it means speaking in your congregation, speaking in a men's group, whatever it might be,